My name is H.D. Stoneking, and I've been asked to give my version of what I saw in World War II. And and I'm going to do the best I can. First, I'm going to tell you that I came to Dallas 27 years ago from West Texas, and I've been here ever since. And I went into the Army in El Paso, Texas in 1939 or 40, and was later on I was sent to Germany, and on this trip into Germany, I was en route to the Dachau prison camp toward it. And
can you tell us what warding means? What you were to do there? You said toward it. What does that mean?
Toward it.
Yeah. Describe what you were saying.
Toward.
Oh, toward it. Oh, I beg your pardon. Okay.
And upon going in toward Dachau, before I got there, about I would say 10 or 15 miles, the first I saw and the first time I ever heard the word Dachau spoken, a woman came up on a bicycle from the camp, describing that there was shooting going on down there, and we went on, and she was from Hungary, and we went on. We were traveling as fast as our slowest unit, and it took us 2 or 3 hours to get there. But when we got there, well, it was pretty well taken care of, and we were divided up into units and distributed around for the purpose of taking care of things as they come, such as distributing food and taking care of personnel and whatever was to be done. Now, one of the trips that I made right in along about that time was to I can't think of it. ULM, with a load of food for displaced persons. And there was displaced persons all up and down the highway and all around the towns, all around the neighborhoods, everywhere you looked. There was somebody sitting around in need of something. And everybody you saw was in need of something. And we done the best that we could. And
could you describe what they looked like, how needy they were, what it was like for you to see them?
Well, it was terrible. They were all needy. There's none of them that could walk very good. The prisoners of Dachau were scattered all over everything. And they were sitting down and holding their hand out for help. And we were helping them the best we could. And I have given every bit of the food that I had in my possessions to them and tried to help them devour it, and some could and some couldn't. But later on, they were pretty well picked up and distributed to camps and hospitals. Hospitals is where I went more than anything else with food stuff. And they took them to several hospitals, and we would. I imagine there's 20 trucks divided into about 4 sections, about 5 trucks per section, going in every direction, taking food to the out places, such as hospitals where they were taking the prisoners to, for one, and then there was already places where where there's nothing but women there, and they were in need of food, and we drove in there and unloaded 5 truckloads of food and done a little question around about what was going on around there and what they was doing, and they were from every country in the world. I mean, in Europe, and they were waiting for shipments to be made out of there. It was a central camp.
Did any of these people describe the conditions that they had come out of?
Oh yes, their description of the way they were fed, there was once a day a bowl of bouillon and a piece of bread. And they also had an adequate supply of turnips, and they said once in a while they'd get in season they'd get turnips in with along with that. And but that was they described it as a hellhole, in which it was, and I took their word for that. I went inside of the crematory, and I got out of there in a hurry because it was so rancid. The smell was terrible. And then later on, I went inside of the barracks, and the description of the barracks was 3 high, and they had dead ones, they had sick ones, they had some that could raise up and put their hand out for, please help me, and I couldn't stand that any longer, and I got out of there just as fast as I could. But, outside of that, I was in the process of distributing food. And
other than starvation, were there other things that they described to you about the camp?
Well, not too much, because there's just this one fellow that I talked to that was telling about how they fed and all that, and then he described it as filthy. And it couldn't be. It looks just like he says, it couldn't be anything but filthy. There wasn't anybody there to take care of it. Sometimes they had water, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they had a little bit of food, and sometimes they didn't. And most of the time they didn't. I was later on sent to Salzburg on a roadblock about a month after that, after all that rush of merchandise and transfer of people and food stuff. And I was on a roadblock hunting Nazis. And I was hunting Nazis all the time I was there. We all shook down. One bunch of soldiers or young Germans come along, uniform or no uniform. Well, we had to shake him down and see where his tattoos were located, if he had any, and if he was a Nazi, if he was an SS soldier, well, he went with us under arrest and put in a paddy wagon.
And it was by the tattoos that you could tell.
Mm-hmm. That's right. They were tattooed on their left arm right here, 2 S's. And anybody that was a Nazi soldier had tattoos on his left arm, or a place where he cut them out with a knife. But if he had a hole in his arm, he was a Nazi. But we got down on the roadblock, and I stayed in one spot there and shook everybody down, and we had a truck come by.
Could you describe your feelings of what this was like for you during this period of time?
Well, I was so glad to be alive that I was happy to go ahead and do it, because I knew that. I was late getting into that war, which was an advantage to me, my age and everything else. Delayed until I was lost. My papers were lost, and I didn't get into to Europe until it was make the landing, the beachhead landing, where the heavy fighting was taking place. And when I did, they were 60 or 70 miles up in France, and I had a chance to dig in and protect myself. But where you're getting off of a ship and a wall of bullets out there, well, you haven't got much of a chance. And I was just thankful that I didn't have to do that, because I could see the results of that. I saw lots of tombstones over there, and I helped bury a lot of people. And I saw in the Rhine River bodies floating. Nobody knows whose, but you could see them down there. And it was it wasn't the happiest feeling, but it was there, and so you soon get to where you just inhale everything that comes to you and make the best you can out of it. And later on, it did affect me. I was nervous, and I still am. But out of that nervous condition, developed stomach trouble, and they had to remove it. And I come out from under that all right, and so I'm not hungry looking, am I?
So you're saying it was bad enough, the conditions were bad enough, they affected you really the rest of your life?
That's for sure. And that you've got to live with. It's already happened, and so I just make the best I can with what I got to work with. And if I get feeling too bad around my family, I leave.
What as you stayed at the roadblock for how long?
Oh, it must have been about 6 or 8 weeks. I was right there in that one spot in Salzburg, and everybody come along there got shook down. And also, while I was there, I deputized a Yugoslav, and his name was Giuseppe. I gave him a pistol, and he helped me separate the people as they come along.
What had been his role in the war?
He was a prisoner, and he told me, he says, I want to help you. He says, they killed my parents and took their livestock and took him a prisoner and kept him working slave labor for 6 years. And he wanted to get his hands in everybody's...
For no reason except that he was Yugoslavian?
That he had been robbed himself, you see. And he wanted to rob every German that come along there, and I let him.
But I mean, he had been captured just because he was a Yugoslavian?
Well, they just confiscated that whole country over there, you know. They took it. They took livestock, and they took the cattle, and they took he was kept for his arms and his body, and his parents was killed because they was too old to do anything like that.
Was he also starved in the process?
No, I believe that guy. I believe that guy managed. He done something somehow, but they worked him, you see. And those that worked, well, they had an opportunity to get out but the ones that were starved is the ones that were in the cages and in the jails. But those that had an opportunity to get out, well, there's turnip patches out there, and there's tater patches, and there's gardens, and you can go through. I've gone through the backyards over there and get me some onions and vegetables, tomatoes out of a garden in season. And I imagine he'd done the same thing, but too, he was pretty aggressive.
What were the other people that were not in the Nazi army? What was their reaction, and what was your reaction?
Well, I didn't have. We weren't allowed, supposedly, to have anything to do with anybody over there. They had a big sign out there. You will fraternize with no German. And I did, and I got caught. And I got demoted. But I didn't care. And so what? I'm not a corporal anymore. I'm not a sergeant anymore. I got busted down twice, but it didn't make any difference.
Well, what was your impression then when you did fraternize?
Oh, I just tried to find out what the people was like, and I find well, in Germany you've got two different classes of people. I found out you've got the industrialists and the Ruhr are radicals, but you've got those old farm people down way on down the country that there was a woman doctor told me that she says this group of people that you're amidst right now are happy with 3 meals a day and a roof over their head. But she says the ones back in the Rhineland says they're radicals and they want everything, and says we just want to be left alone. And that was, she left a pretty good impression of the average farmer down in the peasant or whatever you might call them. But then the difference is between that part of the country and then the commercial and industrial Rhineland. And I'd say around the Rhine River, anywhere. I spent a lot of time on that Rhine River getting across it. And getting across it wasn't any problem. It wasn't. After we got across the Rhine River, well, it was pretty easy sliding. But there wasn't any barricades between the Rhine River and Dachau. And I might say it that way, but you didn't know whether you was in front of the bullets or behind them. There's they're shooting at you from the side and behind and everywhere else. And every time we got triggered off with somebody that was shooting at us, well, we centered on them and wiped them out, which was about all we could do. But it soon got to where there wasn't any of that. They laid down their arms.
Where did you go from Salzburg?
Well, things were getting in pretty good in control, and we just sat around and waited shipment to the United States. And while we was doing it, well, we took advantage of the Alps and Berchtesgaden and Switzerland, and had a little visitation around here, there, and yonder.
How long were you over there?
Less than a year. I was over there less than a year, about, I'd say around 9 or 10 months. But I didn't come back with the unit that I went over there with because they went to Japan. And I was a little bit, I was 32 years old and eligible for a discharge, and they dropped me off in France. And then forgot about me until I got causing them trouble and going inland without traveling.
Did you find conditions in France? What were those like?
Oh, I'd rather say that the French people could have a whole lot better country they've got over there if they weren't so lazy. You see where a bomb hit in France and Blockbuster hit and knocked a hole in the ground that you could put a house down in, and you come back a year later or 6 months later and nobody done anything, or they tear his house down, but there was no German on the Rhine. Somebody, we had them pocketed up there and had them scissored in, and just waiting on them to come out and give up, and just firing on one another every once in a while, keeping the cost of everything, the lives and everything down. A bullet hit the end of his house, a bomb, a shell from about a 105 millimeter, and knocked the end of it out. And we stayed there several before we left, he had it built back up. But he was one of the working farmers, is what he was, and then the type of a person that his home got hit, and he went out there and cleaned up the brick and started putting it right back. Well, if that Frenchman, he just sat there and look at it and wait on us to do it, or somebody to do it. They're kind of lazy. And they didn't keep their ground. Their land was dirty looking, and their cities were unkept. And you take Munich and the places that I did see, well, out on the roadside, that person that owned that land between the land was responsible for the right-of-way clear onto the highway. And they had to keep it, and so Germany was kept and France was not kept.
Are there any other experiences that you had when you were over there that come to your mind or that made a big impression on you?
Well, no, not that I can think of. I didn't stay in any one place over there too long. We went in at La Havre traveling, and we traveled right on and didn't stop until we got to Rhineland, and then we had to do a little bit of fighting there. And then whenever that subsided, well, then we went on across. And then, like I say, it's from after you passed the Rhine River, well, it was just like cops and robbers, you know, on the run. You didn't know whether he was running from them or toward them. But you was moving fast. You didn't know when bullets would come sailing. They might come from behind or your flank, left flank, right flank, maybe out in front of you. But there wasn't very much of that after you got in central Germany.
So how long were you in Germany itself?
Most of that time.
Most of that 8 or 10
Mm-hmm.
months. And you were just in Dachau a few weeks,
Oh,
you
just,
said?
mm-hmm. And then on to Salzburg.
For
And
about 6 weeks.
then we were just camped out waiting for shipment. There was, what there actually was, there was about 5 million displaced persons over there running up and down the highways and everything. And then, too, there was all that troops and everything over there, and it was over with. Well, what you going to do with them? You spent a year or two getting them in there, and you're going to spend a year or two getting them out, and that's just what it was. Just stay here until we moved toward the Havre, France, a little at a time. We'd move maybe 25 or 50 miles and set up.
Did you talk to any of the displaced persons and get any stories from them?
No, well, not. I didn't. I don't remember them. I probably did, but that's 42 years ago, and I'm not. I don't remember. I don't remember just exactly like I did whenever I was younger than that. But I did talk with a lot of displaced persons, and I talked to them, and it was very nice of the residents over there. Of course, they was ordered to, but you would see one walk all day long. Had walked all day long, going back to his native land, and you'd see them take off in the morning, and they were all clean. They'd cleaned their bodies up and washed their clothes and everything overnight. And they were ordered. Those residents was ordered to take them in. Don't turn down anybody, and they pretty well obeyed it.
These were the German
and French,
citizens.
and French too,
and French citizens.
Because they were just as thick in France, running around there hunting for a place to go and trying to get back to their native land, and it was just about as broad as it was long.
What was it like for you immediately after the war?
Oh, well, it's harder then than it was during. And I was awful nervous, and so I didn't settle back down where anybody that knew me. I spent nearly a year around strangers.
What